All right, welcome back. You're watching Inside Politics. The conversation went on even during the break. So welcome back. We continue with our deliberations centered on President William Ruto's state visit to the United States, which concluded just yesterday after he arrived in the country Saturday evening. I'm joined by Ambassador Dr. Josephine Ojiambo, equally joined by Zach Kinuthia, Mark Bichachi, and Dr. Alutalala Mukwana. Let's continue with the conversation. Bichachi, we left you as you're exhausting a point, but it would be proper to equally talk about the strategic communication angle in this trip, because there are a couple of boxes that needed to be ticked, perhaps in terms of the portrayal of the Kenyan president as a dignified and a respectful statesman. Did we tick that box in terms of ensuring this visit highlights the strategic importance of Kenya-US relations, avoiding any portrayal that diminishes the image and stature of the Kenyan president? Did we tick all the boxes when it comes to the strategic communication aspect of this particular visit?
Let me start with the question I was answering before,
Yes.
before I get into strategic communication. So, first and foremost, yes, it is true. For sure, the United States does have interests in Kenya. Interest number one should be obvious. Kenya has agreed, malevolently so, to give 1,000 of our police officers to solve a very American problem in Haiti. And we've stepped in, as we've usually done, as we did in Yugoslavia, as we did in Cote d'Ivoire, not Ivory Coast, in Sierra Leone and other places, where Kenya has always stood up for Africans and for other people who are in places where they need our expertise. So that is number one. Yes, the United States has an interest in what is going on in Haiti, and Kenya is important in that particular aspect. Number two, we need to remember that Kenya is surrounded by conflicts. We've got conflicts in Somalia, we've got conflicts in Ethiopia, we've got conflicts in South Sudan, which we are currently hosting negotiations about. We've got conflicts in the Sudan, of which President Ruto was chosen by IGAD to be the person who's spearheading that conversation. We've got conflicts in the Congo, and we are the only country in Eastern Africa that has been A, democratically stable, and B, been willing to actually participate in the peace process. The only other country that would have tried is Tanzania, but Tanzania is a bit of a closed state. They rarely even speak about matters outside their own borders. So if you want to stabilize the Horn of Africa and the East African community at large, you have to talk to Kenya. You have to talk to Kenya. The third thing is we need to be very clear. When you look at the median age of continents in the world, Africa is the only one whose age is below 20. We are at 19. That's our average age. Two, Africa has the largest potential market for any industrialized country in the world, which is why the EU has had an agreement with us. Brexit happened, and 3 months later, we had an agreement between the UK and Kenya. At the end of the day, people are looking for, one, what is the entry point to this African continent for business and development? Because whether we like it or not, the way the demographics are going, Africa and Kenya is the future. Now, look at the options. On this side of the Indian Ocean, you either deal with Kenya or with South Africa. Now, South Africa has decided to pick very strong stances, for example, on the issues of Israel, for example, on the issues of how they trade with Russia, their engagement through the BRICS system. So definitely, when you're looking across the Indian Ocean, the only country that you can land to and then be able to project your power and influence is Kenya. So in many regards, the United States is recognizing and realizing both the strategic importance of Kenya that has been bestowed upon us by God, by nature of where we are, but also the kind of people and capacity that we have. Right. This is the most technical country this side of the world. So at the end of the day, the United States is doing good business, doing business with Kenya. But also let us remember that over the last 30-odd years of Kenyan presidencies, we realize that there's always a hallmark point for each president. For Uhuru Kenyatta, it was when he got the deal for the SGR. Right? That was a hallmark moment. And we sat here and discussed the same thing, saying, is he now a puppet of the East? Is he now working towards the East? The truth is the East and the West are in competition. We happen to be in the middle. Our job is to take our pound of flesh. That's our job.
Okay.
Our job is when America comes and it's willing to give us $1 billion, we take it. For as long as we are not going to be slaves to them, and I've not read anywhere we're going to be slaves, at the end of the day, we take our pound of flesh and we eat it very nice with some pepper and enjoy our steak, because $1 billion is nearly 1% of Kenya's GDP. It is a big deal. It is jobs for our young people, it is education, it is all of those things. Now, let me discuss the PR
briefly
issues.
Yeah.
Yes, in an event as big as this, there is the international viewership that we got. Kenya was on everyone's lips. In Kenya, we may have complained about the 200 million jet. I don't think that is what was missed. The only thing we should have added on that jet was the Kenyan flag. That would have been excellent branding. It was good branding for this country to be seen to sit peer to peer with the Bidens of this world. That was good branding, because the world has to take Kenya seriously. Now, when the next time the Chinese ambassador is meeting the president, he has to talk to us seriously. Why? Because we've projected power. Okay. We have shown that we have enough influence and enough importance for the most powerful and richest country in the world to listen to us. Now we need to leverage that, and every time we talk to everyone else, we need to remind them who our friends are. And that brings me now to the non-NATO ally. Being a non-NATO ally is no joke. Now, people have said, does this then mean that Kenya will be in the bullseye for Al-Shabaab? I'm like, but where have we been? We've been at the bullseye of Al-Shabaab since 2007, when they started bombing town, CBD, Nairobi. So for us being in the bullseye, okay, and then getting the advantage of getting military support and things like that, that is good. But let us not lie to ourselves. America has interests, Kenya has interests, and it so happens that at now, those interests align.
Interesting. Let's talk about the security interests in the region. And before we cross over to Dr. Ojambo, we just want to listen into what President Ruto had to say, equally the US President Biden, in terms of the issue around the Haiti mission, and equally when the president was put to task to explain what exactly is going on in terms of the Haiti deployment vis-a-vis the banditry situation we have in the North Rift. Listen in.
I'm very grateful for President Ruto's leadership here, multinational effort, but Kenya's willingness to really lead this matters. You're not the only country, but you're leading this effort. And there's going to be U.S. forces not on the ground, but we're going to supply logistics, intelligence, and equipment. Matter of fact, some equipment has already arrived. And Kenya is stepping up with police, and other countries plan to do as well. The United States is going to support the collective effort here. And of course, Kenya won't be going it alone. We're working with Congress to provide $300 million to MSS mission and an additional $60 million for equipment.
We were deploying troops and policemen in our own country, in North Rift, to sort out the banditry problem. We still deployed 1,000 troops to DRC Congo, because that is our neighborhood. We have 5,000 troops in Somalia, because equally that is our responsibility. And Haiti should not be an exception. That's why deploying 1,000 security men to Haiti speaks to the same belief and commitment to peace and security.
Well, the president is speaking to plans to elevate security ties between these two countries. So, Dr. talk to us about what this means for Kenya and its role in the volatile East Africa region, and equally the putting out fires in other countries while we still have fires within our own borders. How, in matters of priority, how do we play this when it comes to diplomacy?
Okay, I'm glad you said when it comes to diplomacy. So I want to bridge with where Mark left off and say thank you very much. Today you should have been on this side of the table. But I just want to say that in the discussion on the Kenya-China relations, there's a role for diplomacy. Kenya's position must be nuanced diplomatically now, diplomatic balancing, so that we don't alienate either the US or China or any other partner, both regionally or internationally. And I think that's what is left for us to do back home. We need to leverage these negotiations going forward to get the best out of each negotiation. I mean, China to realize that much as they don't have values on the table with human rights and governance written into each MOU or agreement, that the US will. Yeah? And so that we as diplomats ensure we are not caught up in any crossfire between China, US, and other allies. And those would be the Qataris and the regional players. But I just want to bring that in, because I don't think that there's anything lost. I think the head of state answered well, Richard Quest. I think he made it very clear we are still non-allied, and what we'll do is we shall navigate our diplomatic relations like we've done between the US and China. But I want to now speak about the region. Yes, we've heard about the fact that we'll have helicopters deployed here, that we'll have strengthened capacities on the ground, and that there'll be training indeed for our military. We also know, like Mark has said, we have deployed to Haiti a commitment. We will deploy 1,000 police officers to Haiti.
Yes.
But we know that back home there's been a lot of hue and cry about Baringo, but the head of state was clear. He has sent 3,000 troops and 2,000 more will be deployed shortly. So he has actually given 5 times more presence to Baringo than we have to Haiti. But Kenya has been doing this. Over the years, we are known as a trusted ally to our regional neighbors. We have actually deployed troops in 47 international settings successfully around the world. This is not news. And we are doing it even within the region. We have supported incursions, where we have interventions in Somalia. We continue to provide a border presence for the stabilization of Sudan, which right now has a lot of, should I say, challenges. More than that, we do know that Ethiopia and Somalia too have their own cross-border issues. So what I want to say is that the US has helped us to strengthen, and it will help us to strengthen our security. And we, because we share the same values for peace and security across the globe with the US, can continue to exert global leadership, local leadership, regional leadership with this strength and presence. That is a shared and mutual interest. I want to therefore state that we lose nothing. In fact, we are gaining in terms of soft power. Our image grows, our leadership ability in Kenya, in the region grows, our ability to access NATO, our UN presence, our regional presence in IGAD and others continues to grow. We will in fact be able through soft power to influence other partners, our neighbors, to think, well, if Kenya's image is growing, let's support Kenya. You may be surprised, there'll be others in the region who will say, let's follow suit. You may find that Tanzania may itself begin to open up negotiations. This will stabilize a lot of the regional interests, providing stability. I want to just answer some of the issues that my colleague mentioned. I think Meg Whitman is an amazing ambassador. You know, economic diplomacy is one of the portfolios in foreign policy. She's doing her thing. Smith Hemstone was an ambassador like her, frank, honest, forthright, but he focused on the issues of democracy. What she is doing is she's opening up the gateway to East Africa for the US. That's another benefit that they get. They are also nuanced in that if they support us in climate, they also are able to reduce their carbon emissions by helping us pass on the same, and should I say sequestrate carbon in our tree planting or tree growing. I want to just say through health, we are providing market opportunities for US firms, but we're getting healthcare, medicines, and other health benefits for our communities. When it comes to soft power, then Kenya becomes a leader in health, a global leader in health. These are very important things you can't put a dollar value to, but they are mutual. Now, I'm not sure that I've answered your question, because you wanted to know more about security, but we can open that up.
Okay.
All I'll say is that as a non-NATO ally, we don't come to the table as another NATO partner, but we also benefit from military, trade, and security inputs into our country.
All right, well noted. Dr. Ari, add your voice to the security issue.
Yeah, thank you. I must commend my brother Mark here on how he got the whole issue of the compartment of benefits that the state visit by His Excellency the President brings to Kenya. That was lauded. I must associate myself fully with his pronouncements. But now let's talk about security. Rogers, the first port of call when you're talking about what benefits we're bound to get from this visit is the very entry of Kenya as a major non-NATO treaty member. The first benefit is that members of that category have the benefit that the ban on export of certain military equipment is lifted. And therefore, through that window, Kenya will be able to improve its assortment of military weapons and securities and logistics in the military. Now, that is huge, very huge. Apart from that, also through that window, there is a possibility that the US can then use the Kenyan territory as a stockpile of some of their reserve weapons. Now, the logistics involved, the ripple effect in terms of jobs, in terms of food consumed, in terms of other jobs that will emerge is huge. But most importantly, we are talking about a volatile region, as my brother said here, and there can be no better way to improve the safety of Kenya than by improving the regional safety and security of this region. Internally, there is also a promise that the US will help, in fact, funds were already set aside to fight corruption and improve the corruption combating efforts. I repeat that because Rogers, corruption has dented our growth for the longest time. And if the US will mean what it says and says what it means, and if the head of state will mean what he says, that he's going to fight corruption in this country, the strengthening of the anti-corruption efforts is one area that will go a long way to save resources in all other sectors which have been pilfered because of corruption. Then there's the issue of the National Police Service, the strengthening of the National Police Service, especially the welfare and the building of staff houses for the police. That again is huge because our men and women in blue have been suffering for the longest time by living with most of us in Maradaima, in Umoja. And the nature of their work is that they need a secure and comfortable home to retreat to after a long day or a long night at work. Then there is the whole issue of the justice sector system. They have also promised that they are going to put funds in the improvement of the justice sector system. Then lastly, the literacy program for our children from year 1 to year 3, where funds will be pumped into this section of education to ensure that the literacy levels at that level are improved. There can be no belaboring the point that the ripple ramifications of these interventions will not only be security related, but they'll ripple in all other areas.
Well noted.
Thank you.
Well, Zach, earlier on you mentioned about the interests of the US, but perhaps veering away from that, let's talk about still the interest that Kenya has in terms of this whole deal. They've talked briefly about the Haiti deployment. I'd like your view on that, because the Azimio la Umoja leaders voiced their opinion around that, and they're still against it. What's your view in terms of the Haiti deployment, briefly?
We're actually in court once again.
Yes.
Okay, but I must commend my brother Daktari. I'm sure the State Department must be repeating the arguments they made with us to see whether all of them was actually included as he has spoken them here. I'm sure he has done a better job than the press secretary of the White House did. I'm very proud of him.
Okay.
That's actually very great. Even State House, we may not be able to do that job. He has done an excellent job in bolstering America's interest in Kenya. Now, there is a mistake that we must correct, which is a fallacy of argument. Nobody is saying that Kenya contributing to the security, regional security is wrong. Indeed, Ruto seems not to understand the president. The issue at hand. Nobody opposed us sending troops to DRC. Nobody opposed us sending troops to South Sudan. Nobody is against us contributing. The question is that since 2010, the promulgation of the new constitution forbid the president from deploying police officers outside Kenya. That is our point. It is not deploying security outside. Again, another fallacy that he spoke in the very hot, powerful seat in the world. People would have more send police in Bulgaria, more send police in Slovakia, more send police in Sierra Leone to go and guard infrastructure of the countries hosting them. By the way, police do not go to fight. If you deploy police outside Kenya, they are not supposed to fight. They're supposed to guard infrastructure. So, but 2010, through National Police Service Act, forbid the president or any security council sitting down from deploying police outside Kenya. And this is our point. Why are we sending... So it's okay
with the military?
Yeah, it's okay.
The police is the issue.
In the spirit of brotherhood and global peace and security, we must send our boys out there. It is important. And there are mechanisms provided by international treaties on how this is done. My brother, how would you send policemen outside Kenya? It is illegal, unconstitutional, and it is illegitimate. If you read the law, National Police Service Act, you can't send police out. That's our point. And that is why, when this was well elaborated in the court, President Ruto came together and brought some form of hurried agreement between him and the Prime Minister of Haiti, so that they can formalize this. Yet, it does not defeat the standing of the law. So my point to date in this table, the president has no power. It's actually in law, they say, it's ultra vires for President Ruto to send police out there. What is our interest? Our Haiti, and I like what he has said. I think it's him. This is America's problem. Haiti is not an African problem. It's American problem. So why are we sending this? African Union, in one of their communique, around the same time President Ruto accepted, said this: we have a mechanism of deploying police within African Union for those constitutions that do not prohibit. There's an AFRIPOL. African police has a mechanism. Why wouldn't the US face us through African Union so that we can send even military who can speak French? What is our policemen going to say in Haiti? They speak English, Swahili, and their mother tongues, Interesting. But if we send West Africa, Central Africa, French-speaking armies, they can go there, and because language barrier, even in war, is extremely important. And that's why we have always sent people where English can be spoken. My point to date is that it is illegal, and we must tell the president it is wrong. Sending 1,000 young people in Haiti is going to be wrong. And this will dent his either 5 years or 10 years legacy that he lives on as a president. It is going to fundamentally wreck his image locally.
Interesting. We have an advocate in the...
Yes, if you don't mind, I'm trying to battle with my memory on this one. I'm not so sure whether what Cass is saying is that the Constitution does not provide for the National Police Service to be deployed outside Kenya, or whether he's saying that the Constitution bars that deployment. I think the first one is the correct position. The Constitution provides for the KDF to be deployed and not for the police. And then the KDF Act goes ahead to reinforce that provision that it's KDF which should be deployed outside. However, when you want to, I think their position, for those who've gone to court, is that the Constitution does not provide for that, and you go further, and that is what Justice Mwita said when he was ruling against this. When you go to the National Police Service Act, again, it talks about local deployment, internal security, as opposed to the outside deployment.
Yes.
What I do not know is what the president's why the president's advisors have not advised him to go straight for the amendment of the National Police Service Act, so that then there is an insertion of that provision, because that is the problem.
Okay.
I do not know why his advisors.
That's what we are saying in court.
I think
you are right.
I want to give Mark a point, but before Mark speaks, I think we also need an understanding of what the deployment is for. The deployment is actually to help civilians restore, and the government, the rule of law. They're not going to fight in the colloquial understanding of defense. I'll give you a chance to speak.
Because it's not the correct position.
It is the correct position.
Legally, it's not.
I'm not talking about legal. I'm saying what is. I'm not venturing. I'm asking what is the mission for?
The Haiti mission.
Do you understand what the mission is for? The mission is to restore internal rule of law. And I'd like us to focus on that too.
That's not what they have said.
That's not what...
In the signing
no,
of agreement, just to put it in context, what the policemen are going to do, our 1,000 men are going to guard critical infrastructure. That's what he has signed for.
That's true.
Not to restore order.
That's true. But the thing is, what are they guarding? Because it is those thugs and gangs who have now made it impossible for the ports to operate.
Okay.
So they're restoring the rule of law. Look at what the mission is.
Yeah,
Yes, and that's why I'm saying that has been forgotten on the table. You're focusing on things that are not on the table.
I think
and then let me go forward. I'm not misleading anybody. That's the truth.
I'm not saying you're misleading.
This is a
That would be
discussion.
misleading.
No, it's a discussion. It's not misleading. They are going to restore the rule of law.
No. That one we can't take here. I think it is wrong. We can't say.
It is very true.
Okay, Zach, let's give him time.
I will not be able to go home.
It is very true.
I know.
Well, that's your problem.
If
you need help for that, that's a different thing.
I don't need
Okay, Zach, let's give her time to...
No, yes.
Then we'll come to
But
be
I withdraw the
chatty.
term.
I'm not
Restore
withdrawing.
rule of law.
I'm not withdrawing
Let her
it.
expound
because
her point.
I'm
Let's
not
understand where
withdrawing
she's
it
coming
because
from.
if gangs go to a port and hold up the incoming, should I say, ships and what in the port and operations, one must restore the rule of law. Get gangs out of the and on the streets. Allow people to go to the markets. Allow people to go to schools.
That's order. Which
Yes.
police enforces,
Rule
but not
of
rule of law.
law. Rule of law. Okay,
Rule
if you want
of
to
law
call
is
it
more
law and
constitutional.
order, then
Maybe
call
that
it law
will
and order,
pass, yes.
which is part of the rule of law. So what I want to say is, have you
Zach,
understood?
Zach,
No.
let's-
Have you really understood
Balozi,
why
go
the
ahead.
deployment? And then another thing, don't mislead people. They're not going there to secure a boundary or border or to, should I say, contravene the territorial sovereignty of any country. Yeah, but this is the implication. Another that you forget is, and I want to say, we are sending a well-trained force. It's not the run-of-the-mill policeman. Well-trained, and we are leading a multinational force. So if you don't speak French, there will be other countries speaking French there. So, there are lots of things that are being
By saying
discussed.
well-trained, you mean police has compartments?
Oh, yes, it does.
Weak, strong.
Specially trained for the purpose of Haiti.
Which would that be?
I'm not going to tell you which it is because I'm not a police person, and that is, of course,
Because I
high-level
know something
security.
about police and the Haiti.
But
I would
no,
not
these
know
have been
which
very
one.
well trained and have been trained specially for this
How
deployment.
long have they been in trade?
That you can get if the details are required.
But let's talk about things that are in the public domain.
Yes.
Kenya has a Reke squad, for example, which is trained more than the average policeman.
Policeman, that's right.
So
With a mandate.
Yes, with a mandate. So yes, it is true that we do not have an express statement in our constitution that says the police can be deployed. But I look at this issue not from a Kenyan perspective. I looked at it from the humanitarian perspective. That country needs help. And based on the history I know, whether it's the French or the Americans or whoever has messed up with that country, they need a country that is not looking to project its influence and its power into that country. They need a country that is neutral, that actually cares about these people, because these people are as black as you and I come. That's number one. They are so black, in fact, that they actually once applied to join this very African Union. So for me, I do not look at this from the political nuances and stances that we get. We are looking at a country that is worse than Somalia. We are looking at a country where if we wait for the East or the West to care about, they won't. They won't, because those people are as black as you and I. And as much as I shed a tear every time I see a boat full of black people dying, crossing to Europe, I feel the pain for black people living in Haiti, who their pigs were taken away from them when Aristide was coming into power, where they couldn't even grow their own rice, and today children cannot walk down the streets because of the lack of security.
But Mark, how to help is the most important. How?
Let me.
The what is agreed.
That's what I'm saying. Now, the how is a question of two things. One, willingness to help.
Yes, that's true.
Okay? Kenya has an abundance historically of being willing to help people.
True.
And we should never stop. It will be a big shame. In fact, given the levels of corruption and evil we do in this country, the only reason God has mercy on us is because we help other people.
That's true.
I'm convinced of it. Okay. But number two...
So the willingness must be there too.
Yes. Number two, and I've pondered this question for a long time. They've deployed militaries in Haiti. Did not work.
Kenya or
no,
other
countries.
Yeah, true.
They have done coups. Didn't help. Haiti needs a chance to breathe. It needs to be calmed down, okay? And they sit together and they forge a way forward. There is no military on the face of this earth. I don't know what you would bomb to solve the problem. Haitians need a chance for there to be enough peace for 1, 2, 3 years. Okay. They talk.
Okay. But in this Kenyan way, is this how Kenya should do? Because
but it's the only way.
All right, gentlemen.
The problem is we convoluted the issue. Yes. My intervention, I think, which has been assumed is, and that's where the cast was coming from, whether or not the procedure used by Kenya is legal. That's all. But as for the need, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. There's no argument about it.
Allow us to give Daktari a chance to speak, because we need to take a short break as we excuse her.
I'd like to ask the cast to hold his breath. You can speak to me after the break. Sure. All right. I'd like to confirm that the National Police Service Act in Section 108 allows Kenya, on being satisfied that the law of a country contains provisions reciprocal to Kenya, to deploy its police.
Read for us.
I don't have it. Okay. I wish I did, but I just want you to know that it is there. So I just want you to know there is nothing ultra-virus and there is nothing irregular. I'd also want to support those who have said that indeed there was a bilateral discussion. There was a discussion at the UN, at the Security Council, and there have been discussions with regional partners. So I want to agree with my brother Mark. We are all African people. I want you to know that, in fact, people in Haiti are really delighted that they have Kenya, same color, coming to support and lead a multinational
Were they not the one calling Ruto a slave, a happy slave? The Haiti in America?
Everyone has their view. Okay. Diaspora around the globe are not necessarily as loyal to their home country as you might feel. Many go because of asylum issues and others. Sometimes the same Kenyans will tell you and I off. That's not news. Okay. But I think it's the values that we share. Kenya is a bastion of peace. Kenya has actually deployed in several transnational and international settings before successfully. This is something we are good at doing. That's why we are called.
Balozi, this is the first time you are failing me for abating crime.
I said you wait until the break to voice your comment.
Okay, sorry, well noted. Asanteni sana. She's brought decorum to the discussions. So we have to release Ambassador Dr. Josephine Ojambo just briefly, because she was giving us her input on matters that are her forte when it comes to matters diplomacy, touching on the US and Kenya, of which we truly appreciate. Thank you so much for your indulgence. And perhaps a final comment, yes.
I just want to say one thing as I leave. There's something that we've forgotten to look at, were the people-to-people ties. The president's visit actually had a stopover in Atlanta, where there was a large exhibition where Kenyan diaspora brought to the table their work in innovation and creative sectors. And beyond that, his engagement with Kenyans, including Barack Obama there. I think these are very important things to note, the value of which is much larger than the dollar sign. We now have Kenyans who want to invest in their own economy with their human capital and their creativity. That's also a goodie for us to acknowledge. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Dr. Josephine Ojambo, and the Research Associate at the University of Nairobi, equally the former Ambassador. Just hold your horses, Zach. Hold your horses. She's equally the former Ambassador of Kenya to the UN in New York and the past Deputy Secretary General of the Commonwealth. We appreciate your input. Asante sana. Allow us to continue with the deliberations. The three gentlemen will stay with me as we shift focus to local politics now. And this is where it gets even murkier when we focus on the Mount Kenya region, which seems to have its own fair share of issues if the latest pronouncements by the Deputy President are anything to go by. We'll be back with those pronouncements and a lot more in terms of analysis to stay with Inside Politics.